The day my son told me I was a burden was the day I stopped being his mother and started being his lesson. I can still hear his voice, steady and cold, like he was reading from a script he'd rehearsed. Mom, this isn't working anymore. You can't live alone. Sophie and I can't keep doing this. You're a burden. That word, burden, echoed inside me like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. Not Mom. Not the woman who gave me life. Just a burden. And the next week, I was in a nursing home, but before you shake your head or wonder how it got to that point, let me take you back. Because you can't understand the weight of betrayal until you know the weight of sacrifice. My name is Clara. I'm 73 years old. Sometimes when I wake up, I still feel like the little girl I once was, running barefoot through wheat fields. Wind in my hair, laughter spilling out of me like I could live forever. But then my knees creak, my back groans, and the mirror reminds me that time has had its way with me. Still, I never thought time would harden my son's heart, because to me, Michael was everything. My shadow. My reason. My only child that he used to clutch my hand so tightly I'd wonder if he'd ever let go. He used to crawl under the covers during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't leave me, Mama." And I never did, because there was no one else. His father walked out when Michael was just 2. Said he wasn't cut out for family life. Well, I wasn't cut out for abandonment either, but I didn't get a choice. So there I was. 21 years old, a baby on my hip, bills piled on the table. And no one to lean on. What do you do in that moment? You either give up, or you fight, and I fought. I scrubbed houses until my knuckles bled. I waited tables through the night, smiling at strangers while my body screamed for rest. I sewed dresses for other people's daughters while mine sat in secondhand clothes, and when money was short, I skipped meals. I patched shoes. I stretched one chicken into 4 dinners. Do you know what that feels like, watching your child eat while you pretend you're not hungry? I wore my hunger like a badge. Because every sacrifice meant Michael had a chance, and oh, how proud I was of him. Smart. Handsome. Ambitious. The kind of boy teachers said would go far. And I believed them. When he graduated college, I sat in the crowd clutching tissues, crying so hard people thought I was grieving. But no, I was celebrating. Because I thought, he made it. We made it, and for a little while, it felt like maybe life had finally softened. Then came Sophie, beautiful. Polished. The kind of woman who belonged in glossy magazines, not crowded kitchens. At first, she was sweet to me. Polite. Smiling. But behind the smile, cold. I brushed it off. Told myself it was nerves, or that time would melt her frost. But as months passed, her true feelings bled through little comments here and there. Clara, you don't need to bring so much food, we've got plenty. Clara, the baby doesn't need to be held all the time. Clara, you don't have to visit every week. Each one a gentle shove, pushing me further away from my son's orbit. And Michael? My sweet boy who once clung to me for dear life? He just nodded along. At first, I ignored it. I told myself, they're newlyweds. They need space. I told myself, every marriage has to set its boundaries, but then the phone calls came less often. The visits shorter. When they had their first child, my granddaughter, I thought everything would change. Because who doesn't want their mother nearby when a baby arrives? But instead, the walls went up higher. Mom, we've got it under control. Mom, we'll let you know when you can visit. Mom, don't kiss her too much, germs. And I sat there, holding my tongue, aching for that baby, aching for my son, aching for the family I thought I'd earned after all the years of giving. Tell me, what would you do if you were being quietly shut out of the life you built with your own 2 hands? Then one night, life made the decision for me. I slipped in my kitchen. A stupid fall. My wrist shattered like glass. I remember the shock of the cold tile against my cheek, the sting of pain radiating through my arm, the silence pressing down on me. I called out, but who was there to hear me? At the hospital, Michael stood at the foot of the bed. His face wasn't twisted with worry. It wasn't wet with tears. It was flat. Businesslike. Mom, this isn't working anymore. You can't live alone. Sophie and I can't keep doing this. You're a burden. A burden. Not beloved. Not needed. Not home, just a burden. And within a week, my house was sold. My bags were packed. And I was delivered to a nursing home like an unwanted package. Let me tell you a truth no one likes to say out loud. Nursing homes aren't always places of peace. Sometimes, they're waiting rooms. Waiting for calls that don't come. Visitors who don't arrive. Waiting for the end. The air smelled of bleach and loneliness. The television's blared game shows too loud, as if noise could drown out the ache of being forgotten. The halls were lined with faces, some blank, some desperate, some fading. And me? I sat by the window, staring at the parking lot, hoping to see my son's car. Every time the receptionist said, "Visitor," my heart leapt. And every time it wasn't him, it sank deeper. Have you ever felt that sting? That slow, daily dying, when the person you love most treats you like an afterthought? It doesn't kill you in one blow. It kills you in drops, but here's the thing about pain, if you sit with it long enough, it transforms. At first, I was broken. Then I was bitter. And then? I was angry, not at the nurses. Not at the other residents. At Michael, because I wasn't a burden. I was the woman who worked her hands raw so he could live well. I was the woman who gave up youth and sleep and dreams, and he discarded me. Have you ever felt anger so sharp it almost steadies you? That was me, and one night, as I sat in that sterile-smelling lounge, I thought, maybe I can't leave him money. Maybe I can't leave him property. But I can leave him something else. A real burden. What would you have done, sitting in that place? Would you forgive, or would you make them remember? You'd be surprised what people share when they think no one's listening. In that place, secrets floated through the halls like cigarette smoke. Nurses whispering about residents' families. Residents whispering about money. Sons and daughters whispering about inheritance, and I listened. I heard one woman, Mildred, sobbing that her son only visited when he needed a loan. I heard another, George, complain that his daughter already sold his house while he was still alive, and something inside me clicked. I wasn't the only burden. I wasn't the only parent tossed aside when the giving was done, but unlike them, I wasn't ready to roll over and let my story end there. That's when I remembered something years earlier. After Michael got married, I had quietly drawn up a will. Back then, it was all about making sure he and his family were cared for. I left him everything: the house, the savings, even my mother's jewelry, but that was before he sold my home out from under me and shoved me into a facility like I was luggage. So one crisp morning, when the lawyer came to visit another resident, I pulled him aside. Can we talk in private? I asked, and there, in that small, sterile office, I rewrote my will. Michael's name? Removed. Instead, I left everything: the savings, the heirlooms, even the little life insurance policy, to the nursing home. Are you sure? The lawyer asked. Never been surer, I said, because if Michael thought I was a burden, then let me be the kind of burden he'd never shake off. Now pause for a second. If you were me, would you have cut your child out completely? Or left just enough to sting? Funny thing is, after months of silence, Michael suddenly started visiting again. It was almost comical. The timing was too perfect. He strolled in with Sophie on his arm, smiling wide, acting like nothing had happened. Mom, how are you feeling? You look great. Great? My skin was pale. My eyes were sunken. But for once, I played along, because I knew what he wanted. We'd sit in the lounge, and he'd drop little lines. You know, Mom, Sophie and I have been thinking about the future. College funds for the kids. The mortgage. Or, you always said you wanted to make sure we were comfortable after you're gone. Gone. That word again. Always hovering around me, like I was already halfway buried. I smiled. I nodded. I let him think he was clever, but inside? I was laughing, because he had no idea that the future he was counting on had just slipped through his fingers. One night, after a particularly fake visit filled with his rehearsed affection, I sat in my room staring at the ceiling, and a thought struck me: cutting him out of the will wasn't enough. That would hurt him once. But betrayal like his? That deserved something that lingered, and I realized, the real burden wouldn't be financial. It would be emotional. So I started a little project. Every night, I pulled out a notebook. I wrote everything down: the sacrifices, the skipped meals, the broken dreams, the nights I worked until my body ached, and then, the betrayal. The word burden. The empty visits. The coldness. I wrote it all, not as a diary, but as a confession. A story he couldn't escape, and at the end, I left him a note: Michael, if you ever feel the weight of guilt, just know, it's lighter than the weight you left on me. I hid the journal where I knew it would be found. Not by him directly, but by Sophie. Because she was the kind of woman who snooped, and oh, how I hoped she'd read every word and hold it against him. Sure enough, it happened. One afternoon, Sophie came alone. She pretended she was there for a visit, but I could see her eyes darting around the room. Later that week, Michael came back, red-faced, jaw tight, avoiding my gaze. The journal had been found. He didn't mention it. He didn't yell. But I could see the shift. The crack in his perfect act, and that was when I knew, my burden had landed. Tell me, what hurts more? Losing money? Or losing your reputation in your own home? It all came to a head one Sunday. Michael stormed into the nursing home, his voice low but sharp. Why would you write those things, Mom? Do you know what Sophie thinks of me now? I looked him dead in the eye. Michael, for once in your life, you're feeling what I felt. Disappointment. Shame. Hurt. That's the burden. His face twisted. He wanted to argue, to defend himself. But deep down, he knew I was right, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel weak. I felt powerful. After Sophie found the journal, everything changed. She still came with Michael. But now there was tension in the air, thick, brittle, like glass waiting to shatter. She'd watch him when he spoke. Her eyes narrowed when he brushed off my sacrifices. She asked questions he couldn't answer, and oh, how he squirmed. See, Sophie had always seen me as the inconvenience. The over-involved mother-in-law. The clingy grandma. But once she read my words, she saw the truth. She saw that the man she married wasn't the devoted son he pretended to be. He was a user. A man who tossed aside the very woman who made his success possible, and I didn't have to say a word. One evening, as Michael wheeled me back to my room, Sophie lingered behind. When he stepped out, she leaned in close and whispered, "Clara? I had no idea. I'm sorry." Her voice cracked. Her eyes glistened, and in that moment, I realized, I had turned her into my ally without lifting a finger, because guilt is contagious. She started visiting without Michael. Bringing the children. Letting me hold them, kiss their cheeks, tell them stories, and with every visit, she saw more clearly who I was, and who her husband had become. Michael thought he had rid himself of a burden when he sent me away. But now? Every dinner conversation, every argument, every awkward silence, I was there. In Sophie's voice when she asked, "Why didn't you tell me your mother skipped meals for you?" In her eyes when she said, "How could you call her a burden?" I was the ghost at his table, the shadow in his marriage, the truth he couldn't outrun. That was my gift, not anger. Not money. But guilt. What do you think lasts longer, a fortune? Or a wound carved into someone's conscience? Of course, guilt wasn't my only weapon. Months later, Michael tried to bring up the will. "You still have your accounts, right, Mom? Maybe we should review things? Make sure it's all set for the kids." I nearly laughed. "Oh, it's all set," I said, because what he didn't know was that not only had I cut him out, I had left everything to the nursing home under one condition. That part of it be used to fund free community programs for elderly residents abandoned by their families. In other words, I turned my life savings into a monument to people like me, parents discarded like trash. So every time Michael drove past that building, he wouldn't just see a nursing home. He'd see a reminder. A plaque with my name, funded by the estate of Clara Reynolds. And he would know. It could have been his. But instead, it went to strangers. Because of him, the day he found out, he exploded. He came storming into my room, red as fire, fists clenched. "How could you do this? That was my inheritance. My kid's future." I sat back in my chair, calm as a pond. "No, Michael. That was my sacrifice. And you gave it away the moment you called me a burden." His face crumpled, not with sadness, but with rage, and then Sophie spoke. "Michael," she said, voice low but steady. "You've done enough. Stop." She wasn't defending him anymore. She wasn't on his side. In that moment, I realized, the real burden wasn't me. It was him. Word spread faster than I thought. Families in the nursing home whispered about what I'd done. Nurses passed it along. Soon enough, people knew. Clara Reynolds had cut out her ungrateful son. It got back to his friends. His colleagues. His neighbors, and suddenly, the man who wanted to look respectable, polished, admired, became the man everyone whispered about. Did you hear? His own mother left him nothing. Imagine what he must have done. Reputation. Pride. Legacy. That's what he cared about most, and I had shattered it. Before I tell you the ending, let me leave you with this thought. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can give is not money, not possessions, but a truth too heavy to carry. The last letter I wrote to Michael wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was simple. "Son, you once begged me never to leave you during thunderstorms. But when the storm of life came, you were the one who let go. The burden you feel now is the echo of all the nights I held on for you. Live with it. That's my gift. And tell me, if it were you, would you call that revenge, or justice?" After that last confrontation, Michael's visits slowed. First weekly. Then monthly. Then barely at all. And you know what? I didn't mind, because for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing his affection. I wasn't starving for scraps of his time. I had turned the page. He thought leaving me in that nursing home was punishment. But in truth, it freed me. Freed me from his indifference. Freed me from begging to be seen, and strangely enough, I found peace. See, when blood leaves you behind, sometimes you find